right, it's episode 7, Hawai'i Football Now. Jordan Hunter back with you. We got a lot to get into coming off of a bye week for the University of Hawaii football team. A little structure breakdown of the podcast here. We'll get into some of the off-the-field stuff, if you will, kind of on the front end, and on the back end, we'll get into game week mode and preview the trip to Reno coming up for Coach Todd Graham and his guys as they take on Nevada this coming Saturday up on the continent. All right, Hunter, opening drive. We'll just dive right into it, right? Because the big news of the bye week, even though there wasn't a game, Hawaii obviously, right, getting the heel up after that big win against Fresno State. Fans are allowed. That's right. Announced last week, Friday, the governor, Mayor Blangiardi, having kind of a joint news conference. And it was reported earlier in the week. If you remember last week when we recorded the episode last week, Tuesday, there were reports that came out that there were rumblings that this was coming, and then Friday it became official. And happy to report that up to 1,000 fans are allowed at the next UH football game. Of course, that home game is October 23rd in about 10 days' time as we record this on Tuesday the 12th against New Mexico State. That order basically goes into effect tomorrow. Yesterday, if you were listening to this when it debuts on Thursday, but starting October 13th, outdoor seated maximum capacity for entertainment events, including sporting arenas and concert venues, will be allowed at 50% capacity or a maximum of 1,000 attendees, whichever is smaller. So obviously for Ching, the cap would be 1,000. And beginning October 20th, indoor seating entertainment venues are allowed at 50% capacity or a maximum of 500 attendees. And so that'll obviously affect Rainbow Wahine volleyball. Really the first event of note is the University of Hawaii women's soccer team Thursday night, the 14th at Waipio against UC Irvine coming to town, as they will be sort of the first to go through all of the protocols. You got to be vaccinated, you got to be masked, socially distanced, no food or drink outside of water. You got to have clear bags. I recommend you go on the website and you find out exactly what all is required. We don't know yet exactly how those 1,000 tickets will be distributed for the football game. Friends and family, I assume whether some will be made available for students, season ticket holders, for the opponent as well. All of that yet to be determined. But the big news, Hunter, they're going to have at least 1,000 people, plus media and fans, and media and staff and all that kind of stuff. But there will be people yelling and screaming. Up to 1,000 come October 23rd. How big is this?
Oh, it's huge. We said it last week on the podcast that a win like the win against Fresno State is big enough to affect cultural change. And again, I'm not saying that win single-handedly made this decision happen, because we've had weeks of health officials, government employees, people with serious influential power weighing in on this decision and trying to make this happen. But in light after of just amazing win against a ranked Fresno State team, it doesn't surprise me at all that it came after something like that. It's significant. It's huge. I mean, even being on field this last week against Fresno State, it was a really cool environment. First time I've been able to see the field and the campus in that sort of a new environment. But it was weird. There'd be a touchdown and you would get celebrations from the guys and from different coaches and maybe a few of the media crew that was around, but that was about it. And then after the game, whenever the band was, they put their instruments down and then they erupted in a cheer, it was the loudest I've ever heard the band, because they were the closest thing that resembled a crowd at the Ching complex. And so I am so excited to see what the TC Ching complex could look like, rocking with at least 1,000 fans, because those guys deserve it, Jordan. They've played their butts off up until this point.
They really have, and it's so interesting because the one home game that I've gotten to attend so far was the very first against Portland State, and that was before even the band was allowed. And so it was eerily quiet, right? That was the game they scored 28 first quarter points, and you imagine that place be rocking, right? But of course it wasn't. And you went to the most recent, the Fresno State home game, where at least the band was there. The cheer squad, I believe, the dance team was there. So you had a little bit of, support noise or whatnot. But now that you've been there, now that you've taken it in, you kind of talked a little bit about it. And I know it will just be basically 1/9 of what its potential is in terms of filling that place. But what kind of environment do you expect in that intimate setting? And so, look, 1,000 people filling that thing out socially distanced, I'm going to imagine it's not going to look terrible. It's not going to sound terrible because it's going to be spread out on all four sides. Again, it's got to be distanced. So there'll be people kind of filling every section. This isn't 1,000 people populating Aloha Stadium or anything like that. I think it's going to be kind of cool. Look, I wish there were 9,000 people or 50% or something like that. Like, that's obviously the dream, but 1,000 people there, I think it could be a huge boost.
Oh yeah, totally. And I think it could add such a unique flair to what it means to be a Hawaii football player. With somewhat of a smaller, intimate venue like that, and yeah, obviously 9,000 and change with personnel around the field, up in the media booth as well. They're watching the football game. They're included in that number. That's why stadiums like the Big House sit 100,000, but the final count is always about 116, something like that. So I think eventually we're going to get that number to somewhere around 10. I could see something like that potentially happening whenever we're packed out. But it could be really cool, I think, because even thinking back to different high school games and things like that, where there were definitely at least 1,000 people out there, you get individual voices in just 1,000 people, where at Aloha Stadium it gets drowned out amidst the tens of thousands. You get 1,000, you get that angry uncle yelling at the official, you get the auntie yelling at her nephew to, hey, quit false starting, stuff that we as players, you would hear from people in the first row. But with only 1,000 people, you're going to hear just about everyone. And I mean, I experienced that this last week. Me and Greg Salas were behind the end zone, and we were cheering after a score, and it felt awkward that we were yelling at the top of our lungs. Like, were we supposed to yell right now? Because we're pumped, we're excited, but we're like the only people that are yelling. So I'm excited. Though it's only 1,000, it's something, and I'm hopeful that it's the first of many steps in the right direction.
Yeah, and of course, there are only 3 home games left in total, right? Including that New Mexico State game on the 23rd. You've got San Diego State, who is nationally ranked and undefeated at the moment, and you kind of hope that they still are when they come to town on November the 6th, and then the final home game, November the 20th, against Colorado State. We don't know exactly what the situation will be like come November, what the restrictions will be. But again, Rainbow Wahine Soccer, October the 14th, really the first of these UH events, which will have limited capacity fans allowed. You got the football game on the 23rd. The first weekend for Rainbow Wahine volleyball won't be this homestand coming up this weekend, the 15th and the 16th. It will be October 29th and 30th for the Rainbow Wahine, as the indoor portion of this easing of restrictions, if you will go into effect next week, basically. So this is going to be really interesting to see. It's going to be really, I think, a boost, and we'll see what the situation is coming off of that Nevada game coming up. But from a player perspective, Hunter, this and we've seen guys speak out, and I think more than understandably so. A number of guys, whether speaking to media in person or posting on social media their thoughts, and I think the frustration was very viable, right? It was very understandable. And just look, they've been at this for a season and a half now, basically, right? Where they haven't been able to have their family come watch, and so it seemed like the rope was running thin. This is a group that obviously has found a way to persevere on the field. The huge win over Fresno State, they've positioned themselves now to maybe make a run in conference, but at some point it's like, man, how do you keep self-motivating, right? How do you keep playing in front of empty stadiums and finding that juice? How do you keep digging deep, right? It's almost impossible to ask. And it seemed like it was getting a little thinner and thinner in terms of the patience within that locker room. And just, I'm curious from a player's perspective, Hunter, from your perspective, from your time there. And then I know you keep in touch with some of the guys that are still on the squad. What has this done to morale? Just the news that they're going to be able to welcome in folks and play in front of some folks.
Yeah, I feel like above all else, it is a message to those guys that they're seen and that they're being cared for. Because a couple weeks ago, it seemed like there wasn't any effort at all from, certain government officials to make any effort, if any, towards making something happen for our football team in terms of getting fans in attendance. And so just the fact that there's something being done after a historic win for our program, I think as a player, I would just feel seen. Obviously, I think in Hawaii, the minute we get good news, we start critiquing it. We want it to be fantastic news. But take the win. It's definitely a win. And yeah, going back to what you were saying about kind of getting to the end of your rope. As a player, especially those that are on scholarship, you can start to draw this line mentally between, okay, I'm being my school is getting paid for. I'm getting a little bit of a stipend check to be here. That equals my play on the field. So in a way, this is my job. This is how I get to go to school. This is how I pursue a college degree. There's that sort of resolution you have to go to in your mind whenever stuff like this is happening, or you're playing on a really terrible team. At the end of the day, you're like, I've got a job to do. But I will say that's a lonely road. Whenever you eventually get to that place in your mind, it's not a very life-giving way of looking at your role as a football player. Especially when I know all these guys probably have friends, maybe even family members that are playing on other college teams around the nation in front of packed houses. So it just adds another element of, are we still going through this out here? Are we still doing all of what these guys are attempting or not attempting to do with us? And so yeah, I just think that it's one of those things that they gotta continue have to roll with the punches to some degree.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'm kind of curious to get into, with the bye week usually comes a pretty heavy recruiting week for the coaching staff. It allows them to get on a plane, go watch some recruits, some high school guys, some junior college guys, and obviously here locally as well, they'd usually be kind of making the rounds, and obviously a little different now with the vast majority of high schools not playing just yet. But we had a couple of commitments this year, just this past week, a couple of junior college guys in junior Ta'ase, as well as Noah Kema, a inside linebacker out of Snow College. And so it kind of piqued my interest and does this help at all? And obviously with the stadium situation and everything that's gone on there, and then the fact that they're now the last team to welcome back fans in Division I football, that doesn't help recruiting, right? And it's already a difficult enough job for Todd Graham and his staff. And so some positive news like this during a week where it's like, hey, look, we're out there pounding the pavement. Does that resonate at all, or is it kind of, it's not quite enough just yet?
No, I think that definitely helps. Just about every school looks at last year as a wash. It was COVID. It was a half a season. It's a miracle that we had football. And really, for a lot of those schools, and mainly ours included, COVID season, continued to seep into spring, seeped into the summer. We still didn't really know what the scope of what this year was going to look like for us with the closure of Aloha Stadium. So many things were up in the air. And then add in there, we've got a new stadium now, but we're not going to be able to house anybody. And they were able to get to some sort of a solution halfway through the year. In those conversations with recruits, not only are they able to say, hey, we just beat Fresno State, from those guys that are considering other Mountain West schools, and then throw on top of there, and we're bringing fans back. We're on the way out here. So whenever you do choose to come out here, you're going to be able to play in front of fans. And guess what? The party's on campus now. Come be a part of what we're riding here in for the first time at University of Hawaii. So I think, if I was in that room as a coach or as a recruiter, that's an easy sell. Anytime you can beat a ranked Mountain West opponent on your own campus, on your own turf, you've got bragging rights right there. It's just it's an easy sell for Hawaii, which is already a destination place to come and play football. I hold that reservation with everyone I talk to, Jordan. There should be no reason we are losing the recruiting battle to Fresno State, San Jose State, Nevada, Reno. Like, okay, like I love those guys. People want to play for their home schools. They want to play near where family could come and see them. But at the same time, wouldn't you want to come toss the rock at Hawaii? I don't understand why we lose that recruiting battle. So what happened and what is happening right now with fans is definitely helping us in that aspect.
Yeah, it's positive momentum at the very least, right?
100%.
And just wanted to make a quick correction that Junior Taase is a high school recruit out of the San Bernardino area there in Southern California. Just wanted to get that out. And sort of on that conversation when it comes to, Hawaii in the pecking order, right? Because all these things matter: recruiting, stadium situation, where you're at in terms of the pecking order, especially as conference realignment continues to sort of move along at a seismic pace at times, or on a seismic scale, I should say, but sometimes at a lightning pace. And obviously things sort of kicked off by the news that Texas and Oklahoma are on their way to the SEC, and then the Big 12 all of a sudden has got to figure out what they want to do to still be viable, and then all of a sudden they start picking from different conferences, right? And they're going to add BYU, former Mountain West Conference football member, Cincinnati, UCF out of the AAC, Houston as well. And so all these things factor in. And this is a topic that you and I wanted to get into, as it sort of unfolded, and the bye week is kind of a perfect week to do that. And we've been getting questions as well from some of the listeners out there. And we got one from Leonard on YouTube a couple of weeks ago. And he was asking, what are the chances for Hawaii being considered a Pac-12 possibility? What would it take for Hawaii to get an invite? And right now, I would say, it's pretty much no chance, right? Not when you're playing in a 9,000 seat stadium, not when the current situation is what it is. It's always been a pipe dream. People bring that up all the time, and I get it, right? There are things that make sense, but right now there's no chance until that new stadium gets built and things work out otherwise. But you've had Dave Reardon's column a few weeks ago talking about the possibilities of independence and what that would bring, not reporting or anything like that, but just, what that exploration would be like. You had reports over the last month that Boise State, San Diego State, and others were being looked at by the Big 12. They were being looked at by the American Athletic Conference. If other schools from that conference went to the Big 12, and then all of a sudden the dominoes fall. Very reminiscent of Boise and San Diego State's sort of flirtation with the Big East a little over a decade ago. Remember when they left to go to the Big East, then they came back, and it was a whole weird thing. But the likes of San Diego State, Boise, Colorado State, Air Force, they've all been reportedly targets. And so, look, those dominoes could leave the Mountain West quite rated. And we saw what happened with the WAC, right? And Hawaii was fortunate to find a landing spot for its football program in the Mountain West, and then its non-football programs in the Big West. And it is a pretty stable situation, I would say, for the non-football sports in the Big West. College football is, you never know, right? And so, as of now, with the latest news that everybody seems to be staying pat in the Mountain West, that's great news. I think that's ideal for the University of Hawaii. Independence juxtaposed with Mountain West membership, I would favor Mountain West membership. But if we get into a situation where the Mountain West all of a sudden is scraping at the bottom of the barrel and it's only got 6-8 teams or something like that, then Hawaii's got to get pretty creative. And so what have you made of the news, Hunter? It seems like it was a whole lot of noise, at least for now, nothing tangible just yet. But you got to imagine there's more dominoes to fall in years to come. But what have you made of these developments, and then ultimately non-developments over the last month or so?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty unique time to be around college football. Even if you look at the rankings right now, with Cincinnati at 3, they're literally in the top 4. And for they're in the American Conference, but they are like our cousin in the fact that they're from the group of 5. And this could be the first time that a group of 5 legitimately gets into the Final 4. That is crazy. That is so significant for a school like ours, because, you look back to the 2007 game against Georgia, and obviously we got roasted against those guys. That was the greatest team we've ever had, but it could be the start of what is to come for different college football programs. I think about situations with name, image, and likeness right now too. If we're able to somehow harness the talent that we have here and start to build on different things like that from a recruiting and a player and a coaching standpoint, that would be one of the first places that I would start for this. Again, I totally agree with you. We've got a long way to go before we would even be considered to make the jump from here. And before you make a jump, be the king of your castle first. I mean, if you look at our record in the Mountain West, yeah, we've had a couple of decent years, but we've only ever shared the Mountain West title. You look at schools like Boise and San Diego State, they've earned that right to jump up. We have not. As much as it would be fun, it would be exciting. We're a state school. We're the only school out here that would even have a chance of doing something like that. We've got a long way to go before that. But I do think that there are some really positive things happening for our program right now that could affect the next 4 to 5 years. I mean, we have seen, regardless of your political affiliation, what Mayor Blangiardi, his affiliation with our football team in the past and his fighting for us. That's really great to see, that we have a little bit of backing with some of the government employees up there, because for the longest time we haven't really felt seen or represented on that end. And Hawaii is such a small place where mayors, governors have so much more sway than some of the big states on the mainland. So that's important. Coming onto campus, we've talked about it so many times, but if we can start to build that up again, not go to another Aloha Stadium 2.0, the answer is on campus. That is the answer if we're wanting to build this thing up. And I really don't think it's in the size of the stadium that's important. I mean, I've gone to other smaller stadiums, Oklahoma State, one of them. I think they only hold maybe 18,000, 20,000 at their stadium. It's not that big, but the support from the community is huge. It's everything. And one of the other things that they consider for a Power 5 school is your athletic budget. And I think the bare minimum there is, I think, a profit of around 15 million a year or something like that. And so I don't know what, I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me. I was not a finance guy. Whenever I was at UH, I was an art guy. I don't know the first thing of balancing the UH's checkbook, but I know that we have a long way to go before we're ever considered with the big boys.
Yeah, I think it's a great point in terms of, hey, look, you got to be able to show that you're at least a big fish in your pond, right? You got to be able to show that you're one of the upper echelon Mountain West programs, and they've got a little work to do there. And then, I think it's a great point about the possibilities of an on-campus stadium. I think there's a lot to be discussed there. And this is something that, through the life of this podcast, which we hope to continue for a long, long time, this will be a discussion we have, off and on. No doubt about it.
You'll never hear the end of it from me. You will never hear the end of it. I'm so stoked about this. Yeah.
And I think it's a fun one, right? You get to play roller coaster tycoon a little bit. You get to build a program, if you will. In our 2 cents, we throw that in there. But we're kind of nearing the midway point. So we're going to take a little bit of a break, and then we'll dive back into the Reno matchup and what's coming up this weekend as the University of Hawaii team hits the road once again. As you're listening to Hawaii Football Now, we'll take a little break, come back, dive into the Wolfpack.
This is Hawaii Football Now from ESPN Honolulu.
All right, as we hit the back end of this episode here on Hawaii Football Now, a road trip to Reno as Hawaii once again will step on the plane and head to the continent. They've got a big one coming up against 1-0 in the Mountain West. Nevada, that one win, a big win at Boise. They defeat the Broncos by 10, 41-31 a couple of weeks ago. And we saw what Boise did just this past week. They went to BYU and beat them, previously unbeaten BYU. So it gives you a sense of the caliber. Nevada is 4-1, as we mentioned, wins at Boise and at Cal as well, 22-17. They've also got home blowout wins against Idaho State and then New Mexico State last week, where they just dismantled the Aggies. There's a common opponent there for the University of Hawaii in the early portion of their schedule. Their lone loss, 38-17 at Kansas State, a few weeks into the season. It was a weird one. It was tied at 17 after 3 quarters, and then K-State kind of pulled away. K-State's lost 2 in a row since then. They're only 2 losses on the season, losing to Oklahoma State and Oklahoma. Hawaii, of course, winning the last 2 matchups between these 2 teams, kind of in heartbreaking fashion, if you will, for Nevada in both of those instances. Last year, 24-21 in Halava. Reno came in unbeaten, if you'll remember, eventually ended up finishing 7-2 on the season, made it to the Mountain West Conference Championship game, lost to San Jose State there, beat Tulane in the Idaho Bowl. And then in 2019, heartbreaking for different reasons, Hawaii just went up there and kicked their Ocoles, 54-3, if you remember that one, on a cold, rainy night in Reno. And so this is a Nevada team, I think, smarting for this one. This might be one that they circled on their schedule, not necessarily what you would call a huge rivalry game when you look up and down the schedule for Hawaii year in and year out, but they've kind of had the Wolfpack's number the last 2 years. And again, in games that left a really, really bitter taste in their mouth, I'm going to imagine. We can get into some of the key figures here for Reno. But Hunter, you've gone up there. You've seen what these road trips have looked like. Reno, never easy. It looks like it's going to be cold again on Saturday. I don't know what the moisture is going to be like. Heck, I saw some snow in Utah earlier today. You know, it's getting later into the fall. And so what does this road test present for Hawaii here?
Yeah, I'm interested to see what comes with this one. Cause I think you're exactly right. Nevada's kind of, they're not wanting to, take this game lightly. A lot of those guys that are still on the team, look to get redemption in certain things like this. And, especially after the 2019 butt whooping that we gave them. They're not going to be looking for, anything other than everything they can put in front of us, especially with we're in the heart of conference play right now too. They're 1-0. We are 1-1. They're looking for a win here to pad that Mountain West schedule, heading into the second half of this season. So I think we've got a really solid test in front of us this week. And heading into the middle, late part of October, it gets cold up there, man. That first hit that you experience is a stinger, and usually takes that first one to kind of get you woken up and in the game. As a quarterback too, not sure what the forecast is going to be, how cold it is, but typically after that 40-degree mark, once you just start to get down in the 30s, your fingers, man, it is hard to grip that football. It's hard to stay on top of it. Throw a good ball deep down the field just because you don't have that flick at the end of the ball like you normally do whenever it's warm. That leather, you can kind of cushion a little bit, which those of you at home listening, it's a big reason, again, this is controversy, why the Patriots deflated those footballs. Brady doesn't have the biggest of hands, okay? And so when you don't have the biggest of hands, it's cold, it's rainy, it's hard to throw that football. So when you have a little bit more cushion, more air or less air in there to squeeze with, it's a little bit easier to throw the ball. So I think about that for our QBs, our kickers, the same way too. It's hard to compress the football whenever it's that high. However, on the other side of it, it is Reno. You're in the desert. It's a little higher. The ball will fly further. So it's a little bit this or that. It's always tough for Hawaii to travel, tough to travel for us to up into the mountains at higher elevation. So there's a lot of factors that you have to think about as a team whenever you go play Reno.
Yeah, it's a much different experience than throwing the ball, close to sea level there. Yes. In, on the island, if you will. It's a huge second half for the University of Hawaii, no doubt about that. And they've kind of presented themselves that opportunity, obviously, with the big win against Fresno State. You got to give them credit there. Especially with the next month of games, basically 4 of the 6 teams in the West Division already have a loss. The 2 that don't, Reno and San Diego State are still ahead on Hawaii's schedule. And so they more or less control their own destiny, even though they lost that tight one against San Jose State to open up Mountain West Conference play. And then you look at it, right? This week at Reno, in 3 weeks at San Diego State. They've got a trip to Utah State as well on the 30th, and then that non-conference game again against New Mexico State. And so three of the next 4 games are against teams that are right up there with them in terms of, the standings within the Mountain West Division. You think back to 2019, a 5-3 record got Hawaii into the Mountain West title game. I'm going to imagine somewhere around 6-2, 5-3 again this year with how good the top of the West Division has been, how competitive that has been. San Diego State's 1-0, Reno's 1-0, Fresno, Hawaii, San Jose State, all 1-1. And then UNLV's kind of bringing up the rear at 0-1, and Hawaii gets them in Vegas on November the 13th. And so with that win against Fresno State, all of a sudden, they've not only given themselves an opportunity, but I think, raised a little bit of the expectations for themselves. And they've got a chance to really go ahead and go on a run here and put themselves in position over the last month of the season to be playing for some postseason, games, whether it's the conference championship game or a bowl game. And so this next month sets up to be quite critical now after that win that got them to 3-3 and 1-1 in conference.
Totally. And I think it's an opportunity for these guys to make a statement on what type of a football team you want to be, especially after the first couple of games when we got dusted by UCLA. Oregon State handled us. It gives these guys a chance to not just be lucky to get into a bowl game, but with that win over arguably one of the best teams in our conference in general, not just the west side or the mountain side in general. Fresno State is that kind of a school. You're exactly right, Jordan. It's completely in front of us. Our destiny is our own. It is completely up to us. And it's surprising, man. It really is, the fact that we're sitting here at 3-3. 2 of those losses were to pretty good Pac-12 schools, and then the other one was an unfortunate loss, obviously, to San Jose. But everything's still in front of us, and I'm optimistic to see what these guys can do, especially after a bye week, which with some of the injuries and what has been going on with the squad, I'm anxious to see what type of a team we put on the plane heading to Reno.
And of course, as we record this on Tuesday evening, no word as to who will be the starting quarterback, whether Chevin Cordero is back available. Coach Todd Graham last week basically saying somewhere between 10 and 30 days from the injury, which doesn't really tell you a whole lot. And I wouldn't expect Todd Graham really to tell us much of anything, right? Out there publicly at the very least. It could be Chevin, it could be Braden Shager. I'm going to guess we're probably going to find out about 5 minutes before kickoff, kind of like we found out against Fresno State a few weeks ago. Hawaii 14-point underdogs at last check here on Tuesday evening. This is a good Nevada team. And again, Hawaii's got a lot ahead of them, but they got a lot of really good teams that they're going to have to go through, including this Reno team. Carson Strong is as good, if not better, a quarterback than Jake Haener, who we saw come in here just a couple of weeks ago. He is a legit pro prospect. He is likely a first-round draft pick in mocks just this past week. Mock draft, CBS has him going number 12, and 24/7 Sports has him going number 8. That's overall. That's either like the second or third quarterback taken in a mix with Matt Corral, Malik Willis, the quarterback out of Liberty, Corral, the quarterback out of Ole Miss, and then you got guys mixing in there as well, like Spencer Rattler, whose stock dropped dramatically after that Red River game just this past weekend. But he's that good. He's completing 69.3% of his passes. He's throwing for just under 320 yards a game, 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Kind of similar numbers to what we saw Jake Haener come in here with just a couple of weeks ago. They're really balanced offensively in terms of spreading the ball around. They're more pass heavy. But Toa Tawa is first team preseason all-conference running back, according to Phil Steele. He and Devontae Lee split reps at running back. They've got really identical numbers in terms of carries, yards, and touchdowns. Receiving, they're also really balanced. They've got about 6 guys who all have between 13 and 22 catches. We've got Cole Turner and Elijah Cooks, who have 4 touchdowns, each leading the way. Of course, you got Melquan Stovall there, Melquise Stovall's brother. former Hawaii receiver who's now finishing up his career at Pittsburgh. They're really deep, I guess I should say. They're really talented on the offensive side of the football. That's been their strength. Defensively, it's kind of been a mixed bag, kind of like the University of Hawaii in terms of what they've been able to do. But it all really starts with Carson Strong. This guy's a stud. And so it's going to be really interesting for this Hawaii team, who is ranked third nationally with 13 takeaways. They forced, 16 turnovers. They forced 16 turnovers on the season through their 6 games, which again is top 3 in the country. And so the test here for that side of the football, Hunter, as they look to continue building on what has been a really solid last 3 weeks or so. Again, with Carson Strong at the controls, this is another quarterback-centric offense that they're going to have to go and try and shut down.
Totally. And I think after you see a stat line like what we were able to produce defensively last week against Fresno State, that offense is going to be thinking about that a little bit. 2 turnovers, it's understandable. 3, okay. 4 is a lot. 6 is absurd. 6 is absurd. And I can't speak from a coaching perspective, but as a player, and what if you happen to dig a little deeper and saw some of those highlights, you're looking out for Corey Bethley back there. You absolutely are. Darius Muasau obviously has the respect of the conference as a whole on our defense. They're going to be thinking about passing the ball against us. I really do believe that, especially when you've got a running back like Toa. I think their game plan against us is going to be get that guy as many touches as he can, especially if you've done your homework against us. It's run the ball, take care of the football, and you're going to have a chance to win. That's just the scouting report against our team. And so if you go down the same route as Fresno State did and just sort of go through the motions like you always do, and try to pass the ball down the field, you run the risk in the cold, in whatever the elements are, of turning the ball over like what happened last week. So I expect that would probably be my call there. And then it just comes over to the offensive side, which with Chevin still battling an injury. And then we've got a true freshman looking to cover for him in Brendan Shager. There's a lot up in the air thinking about this game. There's a lot to be determined. I can't really say one or the other, especially with our win against Fresno State, which was amazing. Let me just say that again and again. But it also was pretty fortunate that we walked away with the win there. Some of those turnovers were lucky at best. And the fact that we only beat them by a small margin shows a little bit of what we're capable of as an offense right now. So I'm trying to just be optimistic, but realistic at the same time, Jordan.
No, I think that's a really good perspective. And I agree with you, right? I think teams that have shown a commitment to running the football have had a lot of success against this Hawaii defense. And maybe Fresno State got away from that a little bit. And I know you touched on that last week in our conversation, and flipping that around, it's going to be fun to watch this Hawaii offense, no matter who's at the helm quarterback wise, because of what the running game has done the last few weeks. And they are up to averaging basically 160 yards a game on the ground on the season, and over 200 yards in 2 of their last 3 games on the ground. Whereas Nevada on the other side, they are a team led by a Hawaii guy in Tristan Nichols, in part rushing the passer, former Maui High and St. Louis school standout. They are averaging 4.4 sacks a game. That's number 2 in the country. That's how good their pass rush is. And so I think for Hawaii, it's going to be real key. Stay ahead of the chains, keep running the football, right? Stay out of those obvious passing situations, slow down that pass rush a little bit. And so it may be kind of interesting, right? You get a Hawaii program that is usually known for throwing the ball. You get a Nevada team that is known for that, or a Nevada program that is known for that pistol run attack, right? But a quarterback here that has thrown the ball over the lot, and it may come down to who maybe has more success on the ground here.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's something worth thinking about. Coming down the stretch of a game too, I really hope that they put a little extra effort in who is handling the football in a less than 1 minute situation. We cannot get in another situation with Calvin Turner running to the side, doing something squirrely and coughing that football up again. Again, it's a little tough to put your true freshman out there in crunch time and ask him to do something a little off script, a little unusual. I was talking with Greg Salas about that on the sideline. Sometimes you just drop back and throw it as hard as you can out of bounds, especially in a kill the clock situation, which they needed to figure out how to burn those last 5 seconds of this last game. But I bring that up because with Nevada being such a solid team, we need to be situationally perfect when we play these guys. We cannot afford to do anything dumb on either side of the football. And so with the situation with Chevin still kind of up in the air, we're not really certain of what is going to come about, who's going to be behind the center. That comes to mind for me. And those of you at home, and for you, Jordan, for a lot of people who haven't heard of this guy, I want to be the first one. You heard it here first. There's a kid named Armani Edin. Right now, he's third string for us, number 16, kind of a dual threat QB, played junior college ball in California. Amazing talent. We have not seen him on the field yet. Push come to shove, Chevin isn't able to play. Shager goes down. This kid can play, you guys. I've watched some scout team footage of him absolutely cooking our first team defense with some of the brand new freshman wide receivers out there. I'm super excited to see them give him a chance if we make it down that far. I just wanted that to be said on this podcast in case we see him first this week at Reno.
Yeah, Ed out of Florida went to College of the Canyons in California to play his JUCO ball. Very, very talented, no doubt about that. Yeah, you never know, right? You never know how many guys it's going to take, and I think you bring up some of the attention to detail that is necessary, because that is the margin in these games when you get into these conference games, right? And we saw it against Fresno. One play here or there is even someplace as simple as just burning 2 seconds off the clock. Like that can be the difference between a win and a loss when you get into these contests. So again, it's going to be 4:30 Hawaii time, the kickoff for Hawaii at Reno against the University of Nevada. That game will be on national television, CBS Sports Network once again on the coverage for that one. We got a little bit of overtime to close this thing out, and then we'll set everybody on their way as we get ready for the 7th game of the season here for the University of Hawaii. I'll start this one off. A little somber note for me. Hunter, a former Baldwin product who was actually playing his college football up at Snow College, where Hawaii has gotten some recruits from over the year. Mane Mafatini the third. Everybody knew him as Mane Taimane. Passed away the other weekend in a tragic one-car accident. Maui kid. I knew him pretty well. Helped coach him when he was on the basketball squad there at Baldwin High School. So I just wanted to send my aloha to his family. And I know a lot of folks, obviously very saddened by that news. And a young man who was just a terrific, terrific young man, and gone too soon. So I just wanted to send my aloha there. Just a quick note here at the end of this podcast and a little overtime segment. But I'll leave it to you, Hunter, to bring us home.
Yeah, thoughts and prayers to that family. It's brutal. To change gears just a little bit. I had a sibling at the Oklahoma-Texas Red River Showdown game. Jordan, that might have been the greatest football game I've ever watched. I really truly believe that. For the Heisman hopeful Spencer Rattler to kind of lay an egg in the first quarter or so, and then a true freshman to come in when the score was 41-23 and mount a comeback at the Red River Showdown. And I wish that I could describe the hatred between these two teams. I mean, they hate each other. The fact that was Texas's football game up until the last minute of that ball game. The fact that OU came out with a win and is still in contention to get into the Final Four. I can't think of a game that I've seen from beginning to end that I enjoyed watching more than that one. That was pretty special.
It was insane. I mean, just insane, and the decision to bench Rattler and you bring in the young guy, like it had a little bit of everything. There were some ridiculous plays being made. Texas just kind of letting that one slip away. We all know Hunter's got his roots in Oklahoma, so I'd imagine you were up early for that one. I didn't quite wake up for the 6 a.m. kickoff, but the good news is with college football these days, those games take like 4.5 hours. So if you tune in at like 8, you still catch most of the game. It was insane. I mean, it's just absolutely bonkers how that game played out. And Oklahoma, man, they are counting their blessings, and we got ourselves a little controversy there, quarterback wise in Norman, Oklahoma, and we'll find out this week maybe who's the guy. I think I roll with the youngster.
I do too.
Also, they brought in Spencer. Sorry, I was going to wrap things up, but this just dawned on me. They brought in Rattler to run the 2-point play, and he threw it and he converted it.
I know. And then they put the other guy back in.
Well, then they put the freshman back in for the next series. It had everything.
Let me just pepper this in real quick. So the starters go through every play from beginning to end in the playbook. When you've got a true freshman, you probably just have him go through some of your base package stuff. Mm-hmm. And so if this was a random 2-point conversion play that he's never done before, there's a chance of that happening. So I understand maybe from a personnel standpoint, why they threw him out there for that. But I was the same way. It's like, what are you doing? That this guy has earned this role. Yeah, don't take it from him.
I mean, it makes sense. I think that's great perspective. And then the fact that Rattler came out and fired a strike, like he executed the play, which is, I tip my cap to that guy, because he could have been sulking on the bench, right, and saying, well, okay, where's my transfer portal password and all this kind of stuff. But he came right in. So yeah, it's just a bananas game.
Wow.
It's gonna be hard to find one as good as that one. We'll see. Maybe this Hawaii game this coming weekend will live up a little bit to a little bit of the theater of that Texas-Oklahoma game. Hunter, this has been a lot of fun. Always is. Every week we'll be back again next week, Thursday. You can catch us on all the ESPN Honolulu platforms. Be sure to tune into the broadcast as well on ESPN Honolulu and all the platforms for the Saturday contest as Hawaii takes the trip to Nevada. 4:30 Hawaii kickoff. Again, CBS Sports Network is the television coverage, but you can always catch it with Bobby John and the crew as well. For Hunter, Jordan saying so long. Another edition of Hawaii Football Now. Aloha, everybody.
You've been listening to Hawaii Football Now with Jordan Helle and Hunter Hughes, all from ESPN Honolulu.